Hey, this is Brendan from Wheatus, and you're listening to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast.
'Cause I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Yeah, I'm just a teenage dirtbag, baby. Listen to Iron Maiden, baby, will you
Hi, and welcome to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast, live from the Barn Studio. You got the Mox here, and I'm joined online right now with Brendan from Wheatus. Brendan, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Doing really good. Thanks for joining us today. We're excited you're coming into town with Bowling for Soup on September 6th at the pageant in St. Louis. We're excited to have you back in town.
Yeah, man. Really stoked. Thanks for having us. It's, we've been trying to tour with Soup forever and ever, and just now it's finally coming together. We did it one time back in the UK in 2007, but we've been trying to ever since and never got the timing right, but now it's rocking.
That pairing makes a lot of sense to me, and I imagine it does to you guys too. Is it the same audiences that you're seeing?
Very much so. Makes sense to me as well. I'd say it's like a bit of a crossover because we have a little bit more indie kids and they have a little bit more of the punk rock kids, and it's like we get together and, families come out of it.
You've been a professional musician, touring musician for a number of years, right? How have you seen that landscape change? Is it, we talk a lot about the streaming and how it's not record sales anymore. It's this and that, and how money is generated is kind of different. The live show is imperative now as it was then, but it's in a different kind of place now than it was maybe when you guys started.
Well, I would say that it's everything, and I'd say that it's improved for the better since we started. There's a lot less of that sort of genre hype, people are into everything, it doesn't matter what clique you roll with, you can go see anybody, right? And that wasn't the case back in the day. There was a lot more sort of tribalism, but now everybody just rolls, and it's really fun. And the kind of touring we've been doing, i.e. never off the road, kind of gives you a chance to get to a place with your show where the crowd is part of it, right? They're like, they show up not because they're like passive participants, but because they're there to like go on the ride, and for us, that's definitely been very new for the last like 10 years, like developing like this totally dynamic, evolving relationship with the audience, because we just keep coming out and touring. And they've changed us. We do things so differently now. We don't roll with a set list. We just let the crowd call it, I think for Soup, we're going to try and narrow it down so we keep the show nice and tight. But basically, it's just, Jared, I think, told me he does the same thing. They know what the first song is and the last song, and everything else they don't even talk about. So the crowd gets the show that the crowd wants that night, And the other thing is like, you don't know if the crowd is kind of sleepy or if they're up for it, if they want to rock real hard. They have a right. They spent their money. They have the right to the kind of show that they need that night, right? So, who am I to impose something on them, So it's like, let them tell you how to play is basically the new way.
All the experience that you've had on stage, are you able to tell right away kind of what the crowd is going to be like, right? Because I imagine the day of the week matters too. Sometimes those Friday night crowds, when they've been at work all week and they just want to let loose, or Saturday might be different from a Monday or a Tuesday.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And when we that's what I said, when we come up, I don't know what kind of a show we're going to have until we start playing that first song, and the crowd tells us what we're doing. And, if we don't take our direction from them, if we try to like force something that we've quote unquote rehearsed, that's not as cool. It's never as cool. It doesn't have a vibe. It's a give and take, and we take the first cue from them, You
always kind of hear about those stories about Kiss starting right at, 9 o'clock and they are to the minute done with their set, and everything is just scheduled, and it's, I don't know, maybe more show than anything else. Is that a world that you could ever live in, or is part of the fun for you the spontaneity of it, the excitement of it, of not knowing?
I exist because of that spontaneity. I could never do something so formatted and structured. we take the music really seriously, so we rehearse our asses off, right? We're constantly rehearsing, 5 days a week, kind of 8 hours a day kind of thing, just going to work on it, making sure that we're tightening up the bolts all the time so that we can have fun with it later, right? So that we can be flexible with it later and not get caught up on something we didn't work on. So the serious part for me is the work we do at home and doing this, working on the sounds and working on how we do things properly. And then once we're on stage, man, that's the audience's time. We're just there to deliver whatever they need. So the idea that we would kind of come up and be like, oh, this is exactly what we planned and you're going to sit through it whether you like it or not, I'll never be able to do that. I'll never.
I'm a sports and music guy, so I sometimes compare those two worlds. And you sort of, I think maybe, well, it wasn't the Allen Iverson practice thing, but I think somebody said that some professional athletes said, they pay me to practice. Oops. I would do the games for free. Is that sort of the same thing for you as far as like the live shows?
A bit. Is that the Ultimate Warrior you just knocked over there?
I know, dude. He would totally hammer me, right? Yeah, this is my comfort. It's like my spirit animal, I guess, or something.
Yeah, he was my favorite back in the day, man. He was like he was the ultimate. But I mean, yeah, I mean, like you baseball, right? No one knows what's going to happen in baseball. It doesn't matter what the stats have been up until that day. That day is that day only, right? And what's the saying? Anything can happen in baseball. I think that feels right for shows. I think that should be how shows go, on the positive side, like you can get something you didn't expect and you were overjoyed by. And that's the fire you got to keep lit, I think.
I have 3 daughters, none of them over the age of 14. And they sometimes aren't aware of who I'm interviewing, right? Because it might be somebody that had some success back in the day before they were even born.
Right.
So they asked me this morning before school, Daddy, who are you interviewing today? And I said, have you ever heard the song Teenage Dirtbag? Well, unbeknownst to me, I guess TikTok kind of brought it around for everybody. All 3 of my daughters, again, from 14 to 9, knew your song. Is that that kind of revitalization of something that's a few decades old at this point? Has that been kind of important to your career?
Oh man, it's the bridge to continue doing it. I mean, I can't pretend to understand why or how that happens, but I'll tell you what, I feel like the luckiest idiot who ever came out of Long Island. Like I can't explain how fortunate we are for that. It's just beyond words. I mean, I saw Quincy Jones do one of those videos. Madonna did one, Cheech and Chong did one, Chevy Chase did one. I was like, how do these people, what are they doing?
Wow.
They don't know us. Like, this is crazy. What are you, crazy? So, it just feels nuts to me that's a real thing. And my duty is to keep that song fresh, keep it tight, keep it sounding the way that they're used to having it delivered. Don't change the key. Don't mess around with it. Just give them what they want, give them what it is on the record as best you can, and then involve them in it. So we do have a little bit of a sing along as well. But, it gives me a sense of responsibility and fortune, that's it.
You mentioned the Long Island thing. What was the scene like when you guys were coming up? You always hear about Long Island hardcore and punk.
Mm-hmm.
And
interesting question. So that kind of came a little bit after us. And so when we started, we did it in Manhattan. I moved to New York City when I was 22 years old, and sort of did our thing in the New York clubs, which was a bit more cynical. There wasn't really a scene there necessarily at the time. It was, like very competitive. So you had to be really careful. In New York, you only get one chance to build your crowd. You burn them out. That's it. Doesn't matter how good you are, So we had to be cautious about it. And unfortunately, we missed our own local scene by a few years. And it's something I kind of regret sometimes. Maybe I was born too early or something. Because I would have enjoyed that Taking Back Sunday scene,
yeah.
Glassjaw, and all those bands. So yeah, I mean, it's just something we unfortunately missed.
Do you have favorite Long Island artists? Like if you had a Mount Rushmore of Long Island, what would that look like?
Probably Public Enemy. I
Oh,
think,
yeah, shoot, I forgot about that. Yeah.
yeah, I think we're talking about one of the most important cultural phenomenon of all time. You know, forget it goes transcends music, and I think it's got to be you got to call it Public Enemy. I don't see how you could say otherwise.
Hey, we're talking about Teenage Dirtbag and 105. I want to give credit where credit's due. 105.7 The Point, our alternative station in St. Louis, spun that thing all the time. How important do you think that was for, you being an East Coast band and just, us being in the Midwest in general? We get a little bit of East Coast, we get a little bit of West Coast, and a little bit of Chicago. But how important was that radio station for your success in the smaller markets in the Midwest, would you say?